What's up? So, welcome to another episode of the Whiskey Boys. We are super excited because we're now doing it in different locations. So, as you know, last one we did in my apartment building, in my apartment in general. But we got this idea, like, let's do it all around at some of our favorite bars. And one of my favorite bars in Austin, Texas is called Murray's Tavern. It's in East Austin. Great whiskey selection. We're going to get into that a little bit. But seriously, it reminds me of a New York pub, which is something that's not really out here in Austin. So it gives you that if you're looking for it. They do crazy specials. They even do this thing on Friday where you can get 25-cent martinis.
That's insane.
You just have to order one of the items on their lunch menu.
Yeah.
And one of the items is a prime rib. Honestly, arguably the best prime rib I've ever had.
So freaking good.
So, such a great spot if you like that vibe of a pub in New York City. Frozens, cocktails, beers. They have TVs to watch some of the games. And today, we have some of their great whiskeys that they offer here. So super excited about this. Where should we start? Should we talk about a little bit this day that we're having?
Yeah, let's talk about our day. So we just came back from a couple of bourbon drops.
Wait, you know what? I keep forgetting to do this, but we're the Whiskey Boys on Instagram and TikTok. This is the average whiskey drinker.
Hello.
Also runs the Austin Whiskey Society on Instagram as well, a big group of whiskey drinkers in Austin, Texas. But yeah, he's on Instagram. I mean, he's pretty much one of the Whiskey Boys at this point. But yeah, so we, as usual, are just hanging out and drinking some whiskey. And he told me about a bourbon drop happening tomorrow. You're probably familiar, Total Wine. They're pretty much throughout the U.S., right?
Yeah.
And yeah, tell them a little bit about their bourbon drop.
So if you're a Grand Reserve member, which means you spend a certain amount of money with them in a year, you get emails for certain raffles and certain bourbon drops. And today was their second bourbon drop of the year. And they had about 350 bottles of Blanton's, Elmer T, a little bit of Michter, some old Fitz. What else am I forgetting? Weller Full Proof, Weller 12. And, you show up, technically you show up at 10 a.m. That's when they open to get the bourbon. But, knowing the whiskey world, people get there early. And there were a couple people that got there last night, people that got there at 5 a.m., people were camping. We got there at 7:30.
7:30, yeah. Some guy got there at 9 o'clock yesterday. Mm-hmm. And then they opened at 10 a.m. For us, we were actually out having a little fun. You went to an event at Fierce Whiskers, which is cool for the Austin Whiskey Society. You said like 30-plus guys showed up, right?
Yeah, it was a good time.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I was shooting some content, and he was like, "Are you still out? I'm down for doing another drink." Well, as usual, we ended up stopping at multiple bars. We ended up staying out till like 1 a.m., slept for like 5 hours, woke up, and went to this bourbon drop. But I'm telling you, if you haven't been to a bourbon drop, this is one of the best ways to get good whiskeys. Yeah, you have to wait a little bit, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, and not only getting good whiskey, but just talking to other whiskey people online. Everyone online was so nice, and it's just cool to see people who have a similar hobby as you do. No one was rude or anything like that. We met a lot of cool people. So yeah, it was a great time. We were about 80th in line, so I honestly didn't have any high hopes of us getting anything. But I was surprised when we got there. I wasn't ready. Anthony and I were talking about, we're like, okay, we're either going to get a Blanton's or Weller 12.
Yes.
But when we got there was Weller Full Proof, Blanton's Gold, Blanton's, Elmer T, Russell's 15, Weller 12. I kind of panicked. I was like, oh, and I ended up picking the Elmer T. And what did you get?
Yeah, so I was very tossed up. I had the options between Weller Full Proof as well. These are the ones I was considering, at least, I should say. Elmer T. And then Blanton's Gold. And the fact that I've never had an opportunity before to buy a Blanton's Gold, and I've only tried it once, and I'm a big Blanton's fan. I'm not like, the regular Blanton's is okay, but the straight from the barrel is one of the best whiskey pours I've ever had.
Freaking good. Yeah.
I ended up going with the Blanton's Gold. I thought that would be a good purchase. I was starting to regret it a little bit after. It's just like, oh man, I could have had a Weller Full Proof, which is one of my favorites. Yeah. But I think it was good. I like having more diversity in my whiskey collection.
Agreed. Right? Quick little side question. Is Blanton's overrated? Yes or no?
Oh, I'm going to say yes.
I think yes as well, but I still think it's a good bourbon.
It's a great bourbon.
Yes.
So I always say this about Blanton's. Almost half the price you're paying for just a great bottle design.
Yeah, it's a cool bottle.
Yes. But it's now $80 for a bottle of Blanton's?
I know. I honestly think in a vacuum, and I'm almost convinced if you were to blind people, they would say, oh, this is a solid pour.
Yeah.
But I think it gets a bad rep, number one, because it's very commercialized because of John Wick and the fact that Blanton's, everyone thinks taters drink Blanton's. and then now it's becoming more and more expensive. So I think it gets a bad rep. But in a vacuum, I still think Blanton's is a good bourbon. But is it overrated?
Yes.
Yes, I agree.
Especially now for $80.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to ask that.
Speaking of overrated whiskeys, we have a beautiful lineup here.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to just say this is overrated because if you can get it for $45,
Which is what we got it for today.
it's not overrated.
Not at all.
If it's on the secondary market and you have to go from store to store, drive around the city, and maybe pay over for it $100, I would never pay $100 for it.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. Yeah.
But we have it here today as part of our lineup, so we're going to do a Elmer T. Lee whiskey review, and we're going to give you our opinion on it.
Man, it is like prototypical Buffalo Trace sweetness. Cherry.
I'm definitely getting some butterscotch on the nose.
Yeah, I can see that. I get more cherry, but I can see that. And it's 90 proof. I don't know how old it is. Maybe it's like 5 or 6 years. I don't quote me on that, but it's 90 proof. It's just a very easy to drink bourbon, and I can see why whiskey drinkers in general just like it. It's just very solid and very easy to drink. Complexity wise, maybe there's not much complexity to it, but
sure,
whatever, it's good.
Yeah, I'm getting notes of black tea, a little bit of honey. I'm not gonna lie. I think coming into it, thinking it's overrated because I've had it several times before. I had a bottle I went through before. Mm-hmm. I'm more impressed, maybe because I lowered my expectations and I haven't had it in a while. This is actually pretty tasty.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot.
So let's rate it. If it's a $45 bottle, what would you rate Elmer T. Lee?
Yeah, I would probably give it like a 7 out of 10.
I was going to say for $45, I'd give it like a 7.7 out of 10.
Right.
I'll give it a little higher because I think if I can get it for $45, actually now, the way I'm sipping it today, I would gladly have a couple of them.
Yeah. You had your chance. You blew it.
But I got plans.
You blew it. You blew it. But yeah, it's solid. Yeah, I like it. It's good.
Yeah. So we had a couple subjects we want to talk today. We're just winging it, a couple questions. One fun one I really thought about that I wanted to ask Andrew, and then I'll answer in response. But
curious.
What's a whiskey that when you finally got it, you went home, you had so much excitement for it?
Nice.
Because the bourbon world, we're searching all the time. It's really hard to get certain bottles. So what bottle comes to mind that when you finally got that whiskey bottle, you were just overly joyed out of your mind?
I can remember the exact moment. It's not even because the bottle's so special. It's just because I just started my whiskey journey and I didn't think this bottle was possible to find. It was Weller Full Proof. When I finally got it, just that blue label, the gold top, everything about it was so pretty. No, but it's Weller Full Proof. What about you?
Man, it's so tough. But the Wellers were one of those whiskeys that I could not get in the beginning of my whiskey journey. And Weller Antique for me, I remember the first time I got it, I remember just staring at it like it's in my hands. Yeah. The red golden bottle. Like, how did I get it?
It's so pretty.
And it actually turned out to be great. So it was one of those bottles. $55 at Total Wine. And I remember the guy came out with the box another day just at the liquor store just looking for a whiskey. And he sits down and he pulls it out. And I almost didn't believe it at first. And 3 other dudes came over and hovered on.
Of course.
And he's like, I'm going to need y'all to back up.
Of course.
And I even felt shitty about it. But I was just like, you need to also understand how hard it is for me to find this bottle.
Sir, your hand is wrapped around my waist. Please let go. You're like us, sir.
Yeah. So that was a really big one.
It's part of the hunt and it's part of the excitement sometimes. Now I know sometimes people don't say I don't hunt for whiskey, which is your own personal choice. You don't have to, but part of the excitement in the hunt is when you look around and you find something in the wild at MSRP. It's just a cool feeling. I don't know how to explain it. It's a cool feeling.
I agree, and that's the positive world of the whiskey hunting game.
Yes.
Is like if you're doing it for the fun of it.
Yeah.
Then it's great.
Yeah.
If you're doing it to show off, which we might dive into a little bit later.
That's a subject we should definitely talk about.
But one thing I do want to bring up that I think is interesting is that bourbon hunting, whiskey hunting is like Pokemon Go for adults. Like, do you remember when Pokemon Go came out?
Yeah.
All the kids were just like wandering around the streets trying to find like Pikachu and all the different things.
You're like, I found Charizard.
Yeah.
I found Squirtle.
So that's what it is now for adults. Like, we have this game where we're trying to find these hidden gems that are out there. So it's really fun for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And then you get to drink your Pokemon afterwards too.
And even better, we get drunk from the Pokemon.
Yeah, it's fun. It's really fun. I do think a lot of times it gets a bad rep, and like I said, we'll dive into that. But yeah, it's definitely the Pokemon Go of adults.
Yeah,
it's a good time.
And even though Pokemon Go died down, this hasn't died down for us.
Could you imagine if there was actually like an app that went into whiskey hunting? and like it was like
Oh,
made kind of like
dude, and you
Pokemon.
collect it, and you could show people what you had.
Mhm.
I don't know how you could prove what you had, but that'd be kind of
Right, right. Like when you see it, you take a picture of it, and like becomes in like, yeah,
cool.
we're
Yeah,
onto something. Third job.
interesting.
Yeah. And then after, so go back to our Total Wine day. After our Total Wine, we went to Oak Liquor Cabinet, one of our favorite liquor stores, and ended up getting those little baby Eagle Rares too. And then came here. So we've had a pretty damn good day of bourbon hunting, or I guess just bourbon buying.
Yeah, do you want to tell them? I mean, I know some of the people that listen to this are from Austin, or maybe you're going to visit Austin. Just to give some value, if you do visit Austin, you have to go to Kinfolk, you have to go to Nickel City. Murray's is a place you have to go to. I would say the Grackle, but they charge too much for their whiskey.
They do.
So there's some other Revelry on 7th
Oh,
Street
yes.
or 6th Street.
Yes.
That's a great one. They have like they hide them off to the side so people don't just come in and tear
You don't
through
see
them.
them.
But
Yeah.
the prices are good.
Yes. Yes.
But I want to ask you. I get this question all the time, and you're more of a hunter than me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are some good liquor stores that you recommend in Austin, Texas?
I can think of 3 off the top of my head that I only go to. Number one's Oak Liquor Cabinet. It's a family-owned business by Raj. He's the owner. Best store picks, in my opinion, in Austin. Maybe because I helped with a couple. But he has a wide variety of whiskey, and it's literally everything you want in a mom-and-pop liquor store. Amazing store
Such
picks.
a nice guy.
Very nice guy. He's my go-to. Other ones I really like, Austin Shaker. Multiple locations throughout the city, and Debs. I like those 3 are my go-to. If you're in town in Austin, definitely Oak Liquor Cabinet, Austin Shaker, and Debs.
Great picks.
Yeah.
I agree with those as well. Obviously, you're gonna have your big ones. Like it's never gonna hurt to go to Total Wine
Sure,
Specs,
sure.
which I know they have throughout Texas, and Total Wine you can go to the U.S. But those places, like you rarely find special ones just sitting on the shelf.
Right.
You didn't need to ask them in the back if they have something, or you have to spend a lot of money.
We should definitely dive into that conversation, but you want to try this Maker's Cellar Age first?
Yes.
Okay.
Good transition because we got to also make it through these entire things. This is probably going to be like an hour podcast, maybe 45 minutes. But I love how we're just doing reviews as we're going through them. So next one we have Maker's Mark Cellar Aged. This is honestly in my top 10 favorite whiskeys I've ever tried.
Oh my God, that's a bold statement.
That's a bold statement. But sometimes it's not always about the craziest whiskeys you're trying. It's about what just resonates with your palate.
Yep.
And to me, I drink too much. What candy bar do I always say this?
Almond Joy.
Almond
It
Joy.
literally is an Almond Joy.
It tastes like Almond Joy in a glass. Milk chocolate, coconut, a little bit of nuttiness. So much chocolate.
I think it's a
crazy.
blend of a 13-year and a 14-year, and they age it, or technically not age it, but it's in their cellar, and that's supposed to kind of stop the aging almost a little bit of that. And we actually had a chance to visit it. It is just phenomenal. I think the 2023, for my opinion, is still better, but I can't remember.
Sure.
But I can't imagine something being better than that. But this 2024 Cellar Age, MSRP is $175. That's what we got it for. Secondary goes as much as $350.
Yep.
Solid bottle.
So, fun fact, a lot of people don't know this, but whiskey doesn't need to be spelled with an E. It doesn't need to be spelled without an E.
What?
A lot of people believe that it's spelled with an E or without an E based on the country the whiskey's made, like Scotland, or if it's from Ireland or Japan. Not true. So a lot of people believe that whiskey with an E is made in the U.S. Guess what? Maker's Mark has no E, which I don't know if you can see this here. But
That's crazy, huh?
Maker's Mark has no E.
Yeah.
So you can argue in the comments as much as you want.
Argue.
There's no rules. You can do whatever you want with the spelling.
Yeah. You guys must get a lot of crap for that for the whiskey boys, right? The people try to always be like, you didn't put an E in the whiskey.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. We actually wanted to do Whiskey Boys with an E, but there's a band on Instagram called the Whiskey Boys.
Oh, you told me this.
The thing that makes me feel good about it is he's still active.
Oh,
It's a
okay.
small page,
Okay.
but he's still active. So at least we're not taking it from, somebody who doesn't even use the page.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was funny. So let's do this. So Maker's Mark Cellar Age. Oh, another thing about Maker's Mark. Can you tell them about the age statement?
Oh, yeah. So Maker's Mark actually doesn't put age statements on their whiskey. Surprisingly, a lot of things about Maker's Mark that we learned. But they don't put age statements on their whiskey. This is a blend of a 13 and a 14. But if you look at every one of your Maker's Mark bottles.
Yeah,
no
so
age.
you're not going to find a Maker's Mark that says Maker's Mark 12 year. You probably didn't know that. Like, there's most whiskey brands do. Can you think of another brand that doesn't?
I don't. Buffalo Trace normally doesn't, but you can still find out what age it is.
So they got Eagle Rare,
Yeah,
17.
they put that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
They put that on there. Yeah.
So
But like Blanton's, you have no idea how old that is.
That's a
Elmer
good
T,
example.
You have no idea. People just kind of guess around 4 to 6 years.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the thinking behind Maker's Mark is they want to just do it the right way.
Exactly.
They don't want it to be forced when they do
Uh-huh.
a release that it has to stay 10 years. So maybe the next year they feel it needs to be adjusted this way or that way.
The other crazy thing about Maker's Mark is every single Maker's Mark bottle that you've ever had has been tasted by someone who works at Maker's Mark to make sure there's quality.
That's such a cool fact.
It's crazy.
So tell them about like when we were doing the tour, how we found that out.
Yeah, they have a room at Maker's Mark where all the employees have to go in at some point and try barrels of Maker's Mark and write their notes on it because we walked through that room. So yeah, every bottle of Maker's Mark that you've ever had has been tasted by someone who works there, which is just nuts. But yeah, this is phenomenal. What would you rank this?
Oh yeah. So to finish off, Maker's Mark Cellar aged. I can't believe I'm saying this, but being in my top 10, it's on the lower end of the top 10. It's probably like 9 or 10. It's not going to be like in the top 8, but I'm going to give it a 9.1.
Damn,
That's how much.
I was gonna give it a 9. So
Okay.
yeah.
So yeah, Maker's
Solid.
Mark Cellar aged 9.1. I think you can get it at the distillery sometimes. Ask the person, maybe they have it in the back, you know.
Yeah.
And it's going to be hard to find it out at the store. Do you know what it goes for secondary versus MSRP?
325 to 350, so double MSRP. Which is it's a hefty amount. I don't know if I'd pay that, to be honest. I like it a lot, but 350 is a lot for a bottle. Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. Which brings us to the topic of MSRP. I don't know if you want to.
I know. I do want to talk about. Let me pour this first.
Yeah. What are you gonna pour next?
I'm going to pour us the Michter's 10.
Okay, let's do it.
And then you just tell them a little bit about our experience.
Yeah.
Why Michter's is one of the must-visit distilleries in Louisville, Kentucky, in my opinion. Or no, in the U.S., honestly.
Yeah, Michter's is just... So, number one, we're both just fanboys of Michter's. We love everything that Michter's does. But Michter's Fort Nelson is... it's kind of downtown, actually, in Louisville. But they have a bottle-your-own bourbon experience where, in case you guys don't know, Michter's doesn't really have a cask-strength bourbon, but their bottle-your-own bottle is actually a cask-strength bourbon. So you get to... you have to get there early, sign up for it, and then you wait in line, and then you're eventually able to go to the spot where you actually get to fill up, label your own bottle, and then fill it up. And that bottle is really solid, actually. It's really, really solid. But a really cool experience there.
I mean, maybe I'm being spoiled, and this is probably why I picked some of these, but Michter's 10 is also in my top 10 favorite bottles. I could name some crazy ones, like I tried the Michter's 25-year, 20-year. I think it's unfair to put that in my top favorite just because they're so hard to get and attainable. I want to give recommendations that I think are more attainable.
The bourbon or the rye?
The bourbon.
The bourbon.
So I first tried the rye. I really didn't like it, the Michter's 10-year rye.
That's crazy.
Because, I don't know, maybe it was fresh out of the bottle.
Wow.
It just came off as very dry. Maybe my palate was weird that day.
Yeah.
Put it on my bar cart, ignored it, didn't even want to drink it.
Yeah.
And one day I was like, let me just revisit it. And then it was fantastic.
Yeah.
So I have two theories.
Uh-huh.
One, I was eating something weird that day.
Yeah.
It messed up my palate.
Sure.
The second theory is that whiskey bottles actually do need to be opened up. Air hitting them sometimes does change the way they taste in a good way.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's something that's about the oxidation that happens, science stuff that I have no idea about.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why someone says, when you pour some whiskey, maybe let it sit there for a little bit. Now, I don't know about the theory of the neck pour. I don't believe in it. Do you believe in the neck pour theory?
I don't think I believe in the neck pour theory either.
But I think that stems from it. I think the thought behind it is that there's not much aeration in it, so that first pour that you have hasn't been opened up, so that's what they call the neck pour. I always say, well, you can do that and get rid of the neck pour, but I think the thought behind it is it's that first pour that hasn't gone through oxidation, hasn't been aerated.
The first pour, not the neck pour. It's more about just air needs to hit that whiskey at some point.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I don't really believe in it.
But, you guys tell us, do you believe that opening the bottle, letting it air out a little bit, like wine, actually improves whiskey? I personally think it does.
Yeah, they did an experiment actually. I can't remember what website did it, but they did an experiment where they had bottles that were completely full, half full, and then a quarter full. And they did blind tastings on all of them, and it showed that it didn't matter that much. What mattered was sunlight. They actually showed that the more sunlight that got into a bottle, it actually changed the taste of whiskey, and it made it wasn't not in a good way, in a bad way. So that's why they always say when you store your whiskey bottles, make sure you're storing it somewhere where the sun's just not beating down on it.
That's a great one. So for you, what are 3 ways you want to extend a whiskey's life expectancy? How would I
life expectancy?
Yeah.
One of the things I do is I make sure the cork's always wet. So every couple of weeks, if it's a bottle I don't drink, I do this, and I just make sure.
Oh, I've never done that.
Yeah, I wet the cork.
Okay.
not only just because the corks can break off, right? Especially if it's a one of those wooden.
So keep
corks.
it juicy.
Yes,
Keep
and then
it juicy.
yeah, and then you mentioned one of them was I don't keep it in the sunlight. And then there's another theory that when it starts getting low, that you should just cash it because the aeration will ruin it. I don't know if that's true, but from what I've read, I don't think it's necessarily true. But
You said you should what it?
you should just kill it. Like you shouldn't let whiskey that sits there, with that much left for a long time.
So then put that towards the front of your pickup
Exactly.
line.
Exactly.
Be interesting. I've been doing that more often, and that's the exciting thing about whiskey, right? It's meant to be shared. So when I have a bottle that is halfway down, that's the one I'm bringing to the next holiday party.
Yeah.
That's the one when my friends come over, I tell them they have to try.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand. Well, yeah, I don't understand when people don't want to share their whiskey. 'Cause, like, it's like a cool experience that you want to experience with a buddy, right? It's like watching a movie. Watching a movie alone is just not as fun. You want to have that reaction with that person you're hanging out with.
Yep.
Like when I drink this and I go, oh, and I look over at you and you're going, oh, and we're just both like, oh.
Yeah.
Just makes it so
and then
much
we're just
nicer.
two dudes that are moaning together.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
So let's jump into a review of the Michter's 10
Okay.
year. One of my favorite bottles ever. Famous story for me was I remember it was going for $100, but there was a place that was about an hour drive away, and I drove there to get it for $200. So I paid 200%.
Yeah. Wow.
MSRP.
Wow.
And yeah, it was worth it because it's one of the best bourbons I've ever had. Now here's a fun one for everybody. The age statement isn't true. 10 years doesn't mean it's a 10-year whiskey. When you see that on most whiskeys, I think this is accurate for almost all. I mean, not all. If it's like a single barrel, we were talking about this,
Yeah.
it might not be totally true. But I am intrigued because this one does say single barrel, but I remember being there and them saying it included this.
Interesting.
So
Interesting.
a lot of times, I know, like I was just at a Russell's Reserve dinner like a year and a half, 2 years ago, and it was the Russell's Reserve 13 year. And they said the blend they used to make the 13-year Russell's Reserve include a 19-year barrel of whiskey.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the reason is because the law says whatever the lowest aged whiskey has to be that age statement that you're allowed to say on the bottle.
Yeah.
But it can include older whiskeys. So why is that interesting? Let's say you have an Eagle Rare that's 10 year.
Yeah. Eagle 10. Yep.
And it goes for $35. But then people might be like, oh, I got the Russell's Reserve 13 year. Oh my God, why is it $150?
Yeah.
Well, actually, because it might be older than just 13 years.
That's
it's not just
interesting.
like an Eagle Rare 10 year.
Yeah.
We got to look more into this so we know like the facts.
Yeah. I've heard something similar to that about Eagle 10 before. Because it's it's a small batch technically, right? Eagle 10 is not a single barrel unless you do an Eagle Rare store pick or single barrel pick. So I've definitely heard that there's mixed of Eagle as high as Eagle 15 in an Eagle 10.
See, that's a great example.
Yeah.
Now, you brought up a good point because we were talking about this before we came on the podcast. But this one says 10 years old single barrel.
Yeah, so I don't know how they...
So I don't know if that counts, if like this is one of them or if this is on 10 years, but I could have swore I was at Michter's and they said we had older ages than them.
I mean, because when you come out with a product like Eagle 10, you want it to be pretty consistent throughout the board, right? Like every time you have an Eagle Rare, you want to know what you're having. You don't want every bottle to be different because you want your customers and your consumers to know what they're buying. So I totally understand that, one barrel of Eagle 10 might not taste the other one. So they got to blend a little bit to make it taste like that, right? So sometimes you might have an 11-year or a 13-year, like you said. They got to blend it to get that taste profile that people are used to. So that makes sense.
I agree.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So let's do the review for the Michter's 10 year. I'm going to start off the nose. It's insanely good.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I'm getting like cherry syrup, almost like the maraschino cherries that you get when you do an old fashioned.
Love those.
So it's like very syrupy and just delicious cherry.
I got some oak, not too powerful, but definitely can taste that 10-year oak in there as well too. It's very light too. I think it's like 94 proof, so it doesn't hit you in the face.
Easy sipper in a good way.
Yes,
But
definitely.
complex.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Oak, brown sugar. I don't know. I'm getting some type of berry, and I don't know what the berry is.
Yeah, I'm not getting that. I definitely get brown sugar and oak. Though.
Brown sugar for sure.
Yeah.
But there's something sweet, and it's a fruit,
something.
and I can't figure out what fruit it is because I'm not a professional taster. I'm just a guy.
It must be papaya.
Papaya.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so let's do this. So Michter's 10 year, it's still in my top 10 attainable bottles. I'm not gonna, like I said, I'm not gonna include Eagle Rare 25 and P-Tag. But here's where it's hard. Right now, would you say Maker's Mark Cellar aged?
I was thinking that in my brain the whole time.
Or Michter's 10 year.
It's nice because we have the privilege of drinking these back to back to back, which I think is very important. When you revisit a whiskey like later, it's just not the same, right? But when we had the opportunity to drink all these lineups, I would say this is my favorite so far. This is second, and this is third. So the Maker's Cellar Age still takes it for me. That's just that almond joy.
It's so tough.
What about you?
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah, Maker's also.
I think I'd go with the Maker's Mark Cellar Age.
But we haven't actually gotten to this guy yet.
So we saved
The old Fitz 19.
the old Fitz 19. I didn't realize it was a 19. I was like, hey, can we do the old Fitz for our tasting?
I thought it was a 10.
He pulls out. It's a 19 year.
Oh,
I am
those-
so hyped to try
I'm
this.
so excited too.
I don't think I've tried a 19 year.
I've never had. You tried 25 years though.
The
Oh
old,
no, not old Fitz. Oh, you're talking about old Fitz.
Oh no, I don't mean in general.
Oh, okay.
Like I date 19-year-olds, but no, I'm kidding.
Cancelled.
We're gonna get canceled. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think I've tried the 19 Old Fitzgerald. I think I tried the 13.
13 and 10.
The
for
10.
me. Mm-hmm.
And then maybe like an 8 or something.
Yeah,
like
there's
that.
an 8.
Okay.
I think there's 17 too. I think I haven't done that one either.
Okay.
I cannot wait. We should probably like. Is there water to rinse these? I don't want it to like get.
Unless we just
Can
pour
you
our
pour some
water.
there?
Oh yeah.
Thanks, man.
So the other thing I was going to say, let's do our rating because we rated the other two. So we
Okay.
got this was in the 7s. You were low 7s. I was high 7s.
Okay.
This was 9 and 9.1 for me.
See, for me, it's an easy middle. I think it's like an 8.3, 8.4 for me.
I still think it's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
I'm gonna
fantastic.
base it off the price. 8.7.
Yeah. It's hard to.
It's so hard to do that.
It's hard to not take price into factor a little bit, right?
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you know, when you go and try the Michter's 25 year, that is, what is the MSRP? Is like a couple $1,000s.
That 25, I think it's like, I think it's 10,000. I think it's even maybe
The
5,000.
Eagle Rare was 10,000.
Okay, but maybe Michter's a little bit cheaper than that.
I think the Michter's is a little cheaper, but that would go into it. So like you could almost rate two whiskeys the same rating, even though one's better, but it gets knocked down because the price is so high.
Yep, that's true.
So that's my thing.
That's true.
So I'm rating this like based off of $180 bottle.
Yeah, 185.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, 8.7.
Yeah.
If I saw this on the shelf, I am buying it.
I've used this term before, but pound for pound is my favorite term to use.
Yeah, go
It's
into
like,
that a little
yeah,
bit.
so pound for pound, if you guys watch sports, you know that means like, you know, there are heavyweights, there are lightweights, there are, you know, featherweights. How good are you for each pound you are? So essentially, doing the math and taking this down to the dollar value, how good is your whiskey for the dollar value? So if you have a whiskey you kind of like, but it's $300 versus one that you kind of like, but it's $50, then that one that you kind of like that's $50 is a little bit more pound for pound or better value. So every time I think about whiskeys, I use that term pound per pound, and this one I think is a little bit better value at 175 pound per pound than this one at 185.
Pound for pound.
Yeah.
Pound for pound.
Pound for
I just like the
Pound
idea
for
of it.
pound.
Just keep saying
Pound
it.
per pound. Pound per pound.
You know, it was funny. So we use Opus Clips, which is a really good editing software that you can make clips for reels after you do the YouTube. And there's one, so when you click it, it just keeps replaying.
Uh-huh.
And I forgot to turn it off.
Uh-huh.
And I think we were talking about how this was 200 for a 10-year.
Uh-huh.
And then what other 10-year were we drinking?
Oh,
It was on our podcast. It wasn't Eagle Rare.
drink another 10-year, huh?
There was another 10-year that was cheap
Huh.
that we liked.
Russell's?
Oh, McKenna.
Oh, McKenna.
Or we were talking about McKenna.
Yes.
And they were like, but this one costs so much.
Mhm.
And then you were like, oh, Jeremiah goes, oh, isn't that weird when you think about that? And then you were like, yeah, it's weird when you like really think about that.
Uh-huh.
And it was just on my computer just
Think about
when
it?
you think
Yeah,
about
think
that.
about it? Yeah,
Yeah,
think
when you
about
think about that. It's just over and over and over.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, yes. Okay, so let's jump into this
You
one.
wanna do the honors?
You want to do this class? Okay.
Yeah, let's do it. I am so excited for this one.
Now, do you know anything about Old Fitz to talk about?
I actually don't. I just know it's damn good. It's a weeded bourbon. It's from Heaven Hill, and this bottle is known for one of the prettiest bottles because it's a decanter. I'll talk a little bit about that, about how bottles look. I had this conversation with one of the guys today at the whiskey line. Was how much does how a bottle look affect how it tastes? Now, I don't think it affects how it tastes, but I think it affects how people want something on their shelf to look kind of pretty. There's something to be said about that. Oh my God, look at that color!
I know.
Holy moly!
This cork is like no joke either.
Yeah. So, you know, I think in the whiskey world, like, you know, bottles like Blanton's, James E. Pepper, the Old Fitz, a cool looking bottle does sometimes sway me in terms of whether or not I want to buy something. Does it change your mind?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm actually really, really bad with this. If I think a bottle is a cool design and I know the whiskey shit, I still might consider buying it.
Yeah.
Like, that's how bad I am. Because I am a big believer in, like, your apartment, you care about the art. You care about how clean it is.
Yeah.
When you want your friends to come over, you want it to look like a cool place. Well,
Yeah.
now that's something I'm going to put on my bar card.
Yeah. You want it to look kind of cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are people out there that disagree, but I think if outside of a Willet pot still, I think if it's a cool bottle, I'm hating on Willet pot still, but I'll get it.
I don't remember the joke, but somebody was at the liquor store and they were like joking with his girlfriend or something, and he's like, "Hey babe, go sit on that bottle over there." It's Willet Pastel.
Oh, I get it.
It was like a viral meme or something.
I get it.
All right, Old Fitzgerald 19 year. I'm actually super excited to try this.
Oh man, nose already is pretty
Whoa.
phenomenal. Yeah.
Well, that's like a sweet and creamy.
So
Something.
it's bottled in bond. I think all the old Fits are actually bottled in bond, so it's 100 proof. Obviously, it has to be at least 4 years. This is 19 years.
I'm gonna look at some of these notes. Well, maybe I might try it first before I say.
Oh, that is solid. That is solid. See, not only is this a good-looking bottle, it's a damn good-tasting whiskey as well, too.
Highlighting notes of caramel, vanilla, oak, and spice. I mean, that's very vague.
Vanilla, 100%. I get dark red fruits.
Okay.
Like cherries.
Does it say what year this is?
19? Or you mean like...
Fall 2022.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, here we go. Got 2022.
VVS.
It says at the time in 2022, it was an MSRP of $240. So I'm assuming this is like 500 now. I don't know.
That's a high.
It might even be higher.
Yeah, probably.
Palette. Let's see how much we agree with. Creamy chocolate silk pie. What the hell is silk pie? Aged leather, aged dried oak, peppercorn spice.
I get the
Baked.
peppercorn spice. Okay.
Okay.
I can get down with that.
It's light though, because if it was too much, I wouldn't like it.
Yeah.
Baked bread, you can get that. Aged vanilla bean and a nice combination of flavors.
I get vanilla. I get the peppercorn. Some of these notes, I just don't know how people come up with them, man. Like, they're just so either they're talented or they're making shit up.
Yeah, peppercorn. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm also very convincing. Like, if you tell me something, I'm like, oh yeah.
Dude, yeah. I mean, it's always like that, right? Yeah. You're like,
But sometimes you need to connect it by reading it.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about, what you think can actually impact what you taste, what you smell.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like that's totally a thing. So when you think about almonds, your mind already knows what almond smells like. So when you smell it, you want to expect that almond smell.
Yes.
You get a little bit more. So yeah.
So true. Sometimes I'm even impacted. Like I see the bottle, I'm like,
Yeah.
this tastes like cherry. And I'm like, wait, it's just because the bottle's red. You're thinking red.
Yep. Like
So you have to not do that.
Old Antique. Everyone's like cherry bomb. I think it is
Yeah.
a cherry bomb, but yeah, cherry bomb. And then you see the blue one, blueberries, Weller foolproof blueberries. Yeah, that's hilarious.
So true. Which there was one thing I wanted to bring up because we were going to talk about this earlier, but I don't want to forget it.
Yeah.
So nobody, and I mean nobody, pays MSRP for whiskey. Yeah, it's a hot subject. I'm saying that. And I know there's going to be some people that are going to like this. Nobody pays MSRP for whiskey.
So you're telling me if I were to stumble into a store and find this for $240 and get it MSRP, I'm not paying for MSRP?
You got it for MSRP.
Yeah.
That's the one rare example.
Exception, right? Yeah.
But let me go into what I mean because I think that's important, right? So what I mean by that, let's talk about how people get whiskey bottles that they hunt for or bourbon hunting. One way is to overpay. So that's obviously not MSRP. That's easy.
Yeah.
The other way is to bourbon hunt. Nobody bourbon hunts walks into one store and gets the bottle for MSRP
I
said.
see where you're going. Time is money.
Time is money,
I
so
see
they
where you're
have to spend gas.
Yes.
Maybe they were out for 3 hours when they could have been working or
Okay.
doing something
Okay.
else. That means you spent more than MSRP to go get that bottle.
You develop a relationship with the liquor store.
Develop a relationship. You had to put in time once again.
You're buying store pick after store pick, and then he gives you a bottle of MSRP. Yeah, you got an MSRP, but I just bought 5 store picks.
That's the worst example. Actually,
Yeah.
that's not the worst example. That's a great. I actually like that version of it the most.
Yeah.
Because now you're trying lower end bottles. You're exploring your palate by trying different brands.
Yeah.
You're showing the liquor store that you're a committed person, but you still didn't buy it at MSRP because you had to spend a lot more money
Yeah.
to then get the bottle at MSRP.
Okay, I agree with you. On the off chance, like you said, where I'm going to go to a random liquor store today and I found a rare bottle MSRP. What is that? 1% chance of that happening?
1%, 2%.
So 99% of the chance.
Or they're not a whiskey enthusiast.
Even if you're paying for MSRP, you're actually not because you're spending time, you're spending relationship, and that's okay. And I want to dive even deeper into
Yes,
this subject
let's talk
because
about
this
this.
is such a controversial topic in the whiskey world. Is MSRP versus secondary. There are people who shun those who spend money when they spend secondary money on a bottle because I feel like some people think, oh, I got an MSRP, I'm so cool, right? Whereas sometimes you just don't want to spend time hunting for something. You don't want to develop that relationship, and that's okay.
And that's my mindset. This is what made me want to bring up this subject. is it's more the people that are negative about it. If you shit on people because they bought something for secondary, that's not fair. You spent 3 hours bourbon hunting the other day. Just because that person didn't want to spend 3 hours and they spent an extra $30 to get something, like a Blanton's. Like, you could buy a Blanton's for 80
or 100.
Or 100.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that person now can go right home to his wife or to his friends and just relax on the couch and have a good night.
Yeah.
But I've seen people do that where somebody will buy a Blanton's for $100 and they're like, look, what an idiot.
Yeah.
Why would you ever pay that?
Yeah. It's almost like a show offy thing in the whiskey world where people like to say, I got this bottle for MSRP. You paid secondary. And it's like, okay, hold on there, idiot. You spent 3 hours like driving around town to do that. You're the idiot. You know, like I was spending my 3 hours working and I made more money to buy it on secondary. You know what I mean? So and there's no right answer. You do it however you want. But like you said, I have no problem with it.
And that's what I mean. There's a positive and there's a negative to it. So let's talk about the negative so I can finish with the positive. The negative is, we specifically know a guy. I'm not going to call him out, but I wish he knew who we were talking about because he's the worst. He's a bragger. He's the person that, Jeremiah, when you get a bottle and you text me, look what I got. I'm like so excited for you.
Yeah.
This guy shows it off to be like, yeah, look what I got. You can't get this. Like he's cocky about it. But I've found out that he pretty much buys like a ton of vodka, and that's how he gets these bottles because he spends so much at the store. And he's like, I got it at MSRP. Yeah. It's like, no, you really just bought this vodka that's sitting in your basement. So you probably could have just bought the bottle flat out. Yeah. Now let's jump to the positive. The positive is if you hunt for the love of it and you enjoy it, like Pokemon Go, like we were saying earlier, then that's great. But you're not being that negative person that's talking shit about other people. Yeah. You're just doing it for the fun.
Yeah, you do what you want.
Those are the people I like.
I would never pay $1,000 secondary for a Pappy. But if you have that money and that's what you want to do, go for it. I don't have to agree with you, but I just hate that whole like negativity towards you have to get MSRP. You're paying secondary. You're an idiot. People spend money on whatever the hell they want. If you spend $3,000 on courtside tickets to see the Knicks, that's your money. Are you an idiot for doing it? No. You know what I mean? So that negative, we're getting really passionate about it, but it really annoys me because
it's all about being positive people and friendship and stuff like that.
Yeah. And that's the negative part of whiskey that I don't like. And I think a lot of people get turned off about that because it just becomes this hunt where like, oh, you have to show off the coolest bottle that you got. And it has to be at MSRP.
Yeah, I had this one person that every time I would come home with a bottle, obviously we're on social media, so we post about it, they would be like, oh, I've already had that. And I was like, okay, well, in this moment, I'm just happy to go home and try it. This is my journey.
Right.
And there's definitely a negative part of the bourbon world that's out there, and I don't like it. And I just disconnect, from those people. That's how we became friends. Is like you were a very open person. Yeah.
I agree. Speaking of which, what's the most you think you would pay secondary for? Like, do you have a percentage, or just depends bottle to bottle?
It depends bottle to bottle. Yeah, 100%. Like for example, like Blanton's, like that one, I would probably do 100 if I didn't have one, and I just want to have one at home.
Yeah.
But right now I have one, and I'm like, I have no urge to get another Blanton's.
Right.
But if you told me, a great example. You just told me that Four Roses limited edition is about 200.
Yeah.
You're able to get one for me for 280. I want that bottle so badly.
Yeah.
Now, even though that's not actually that's a pretty good price. After taxes, it would be like 220.
Yeah. You're paying $60 extra.
But there's some bottles that if it's 200, I pay 300 if I want it really badly. Yeah. And once again, I can search for months. I could buy cheap bottles. Instead, I just pay an extra $100. I could go to the bar and spend $40 on a cocktail. Yeah. Instead, I can just get the bottle I want with an extra $100.
That's the funny thing is you'll go to a bar and spend $25 for a pour of nice whiskey, right? But if you think about that, 25 ounces times 25, that's what, $625 for a bottle?
Yep.
You're probably paying less on secondary.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So just don't. People are just so judgy. I mean, it's your money. Do what the hell you want with it.
Exactly. That's what it comes down to. So let's do the final review. We got Old Fitzgerald whiskey, 19-year. Compared to these other ones, man, this is tough. I think I have my answer, but do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think I have mine too. So you want to rate it from 1 to 10?
Let's do both. Let's do versus all these whiskeys.
Okay.
And 1 to 10.
Okay.
I'll go first.
You go first, yeah.
And then I'll let you rate first or something. I'm gonna go. This is the best one.
Okay.
This is the second best, and it's extremely close. That this one could have passed it. This is third, and then this is fourth. The reason why I chose this though is I like it just a bit more unique.
Yeah.
These are just damn good bourbons. I mean, that's why this one came in second, slightly more unique for a bourbon
It
because
is.
it's like
It
a
is.
chocolate candy bar.
Yeah.
Almond Joy, I remembered it.
Yeah. You got it finally.
And then this one is like a classic bourbon. So if you're somebody that doesn't want to veer off and doesn't want interesting stuff, but this one won for me because, like you said, that peppercorn note.
Yeah.
I'm like, cool. You gave me something new to try, something that was a little different.
Yeah, it's definitely very unique. It's so hard, man. I'm between these two as well. Too. I think if you made me pick, I'd probably go Makers.
You got to pick.
Old Fitz 19, Michter's 10, and then Elmer T. Lee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, was it a big? These are pretty close though.
Yeah, they're
Same.
pretty close. They're
So
pretty
yeah,
close.
look at that. Like price wise, some of these
Pretty
might be different.
yeah.
So like you
Yeah.
could argue, choose this one because this is the cheapest one of the bunch.
Yeah, this one's cheaper.
Oh,
175. Yeah, this is 185.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I would say the winner of the day because of pricing might be this one.
Right.
Because I don't know exactly how much we could get this for. I don't think it's even possible.
That's like an impossible unicorn bottle to get. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah.
And then 1 out of 10, Old Fitzgerald whiskey, 19 here. I mean, because I gave this 9.1, I'm going 9.2. I got to just give it a slight
I gave
edge.
this 9, so I think I give this like an 8.8, 8.9.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
I'm not the biggest Old Fitz person, but this is the best one I've had.
Yeah. It's very, very good.
Very good.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, any subjects you can think of before we finish? Did we miss anything?
No, I think we talked about everything. But no one pays MSRP. Sorry.
Nobody pays MSRP. I did think of one.
Yeah.
One
Shoot,
subject.
shoot.
And I want to do this almost every episode.
Okay.
I think this would be fun. I'll go first since I'm like throwing this question at you out of nowhere, so you can think about it for a second. But I wanted to start a series called "How Whiskey Makes You Feel."
Awesome.
So, I'm gonna go first. Let me just tell you how Jack Daniels makes me feel. Jack Daniels makes me want to go to a pool party. I want to be in a relationship, but then I start flirting with my girlfriend's mom. And then I want to just black out on a tube while I start playing AC/DC.
Wow.
And I want to make mistakes, but then in the morning I regret everything I did. That's a good old bottle of single barrel Jack Daniels.
Does it have to be a specific whiskey?
I don't think so. I mean, just Jack. I mean, the original Jack is the one that makes me probably feel that way.
Okay.
Because it doesn't taste great. The other Jacks taste amazing.
Yeah.
But the regular number 7 Jack,
Yeah.
That's a wrecking ball. I'm Miley Cyrus.
Ooh.
I'm bulldozing people.
Damn. E.H. Taylor makes me feel warm and fuzzy, like I want to sit around a fireplace with friends, a giant orgy.
Yes. I'm like, it create. No.
Streaking. Everyone's clothes are off. Now, E.H. Taylor gives me that warm, fuzzy feeling where I just want to hang out with friends and drink. Yeah.
I like this. So, like, I think every episode we'll just bring up a new bottle.
A new bottle and see what it
Because
makes you feel.
I want it to be kind of true,
Yeah.
right? So, like,
All that you said was a lie?
No, that's what I mean.
Oh, okay.
I want it to all be true. So every time we pick one, I want it to actually don't be like, oh, I just made it up because it's whiskey. I want it to be like, actually, I feel that way about that whiskey.
Yeah.
And I do feel that way about Jack. Like, I think of concerts. I think of getting crazy at a party.
I love that. I love that. That's
and
awesome.
then E.H. Taylor, that's a little more upscale. That's a nicer whiskey.
Yeah.
I can see that you're sitting
Say it
at
again.
home.
Say yours again. I'll say mine again. So, Jack Daniels, how it makes you feel.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want me to do? I can do a news story.
Oh yeah, you do a new one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jack Daniels whiskey makes me feel like going to a concert and seeing my ex. And then even though I'm over her, I have to fight her boyfriend because I'm drinking Jack Daniels.
I love that.
And then my girlfriend is asking me why I'm fighting my ex's boyfriend. But I told her I'm drinking Jack Daniels, and she understands, so she hops into the fight too.
The classic hopping in, yes.
And then now we're all brawling, and at the end, it's a great night because we're there to see Limp Bizkit and Fred Durst playing, and that's what happens when you drink Jack Daniels.
Oh wow, yeah. E.H. Taylor makes you feel the exact opposite. Sitting around a warm fireplace, holding hands with friends, seeing Kumbaya, and then having a giant orgy afterwards.
I'm like, each Cellar makes you crazy. Mine was normal compared to yours.
Yeah, yours was real. Mine was warm, and then the next chapter got weird.
Well, that's how you end it on a high note. Thanks again for listening to the Whiskey Boys podcast. You can follow us on Instagram, on TikTok. We're doing vlogs and podcasts on YouTube. We're also throwing it on Spotify. So check that out. Andrew, let them know where they can find you.
Average Whiskey Drinker on Instagram. And pretty much whatever they do. So follow the Whiskey Boys and they'll see me there.
Heck yeah. Well, thank you so much for listening. Check out Murray's Tavern in Austin, Texas. Love it
spot.
here. Talk to y'all soon.
Cheers.